Hey tubers, welcome back for another adventure. So we're working on the 1984 ATC200S obviously, and we got the new forks on it. I was looking at the old forks, and if you could tell, this is pushed in and that one is seized. I'm not quite sure how you do that unless one of your buddies crashes into you. So anyhow, sometimes people have tough lives. I really have no clue, no memory where this one came from, so I really can't comment on any of that or go back and look into it. I wish I remembered, but we'll have more forgetfulness come on as time passes. Anyway, so it got new front forks, and I figured while I was in there, I'd take a look at the brakes. Now, you guys know, I love to say, you need no stinking brakes. And if you're in all-terrain vehicles, all-terrain cycles in particular, you know if you kind of keep your weight on the back and just turn the steering wheel, especially if you lean back and turn the steering, you slow down. I mean, you have to, because as soon as you do that, you start scuffing the tires, so to speak, and you slow down. If you want to go into a corner at full speed, you bring your weight, like if I'm turning left, you bring your weight forward so that your weight's on your front tire and your inside tire, right? You kind of tuck your weight in toward here, which obviously keeps your weight on your steering, keeps your weight on your inside tire, and your back tire can spin free. So anyhow, given that I'm normally not a big believer in brakes, but I had the forks off and everything else, I figured we'd take a look at them. And this is what we have, and you say, wow, you got plenty of meat here on the brake shoe, but the problem is, for old Hondas, this is very, very common. As a matter of fact, it just shut off. You can see what happens is basically the aluminum oxidizes and pushes the brake shoe off. So brake shoes for these things are cheap. I don't know, 10, 15 bucks for a set. I got these over eBay, so they're kind of the China stuff, and you know, probably 35 years from now they'll delaminate just like the other ones. But at that point, hopefully somebody else puts a new set on. The more you get them wet, the more you're going to have that problem. I've seen these where enough water has accumulated and all where the springs actually rust off and the ends break. So that's how you know, that's the whole brake shoe story. Now, when it comes to these, obviously, just kind of pry them off, right? You can even keep the springs right on them. And once you do that, this piece, you can kind of wiggle it out. In my case, that piece is in really nice shape. I have the spring to return it, right? So we have a lot of happiness there. I'm just going to put a new set of brake shoes on it. I'm not going to mess with it too much, because back to that, why break something that works? Now, when you initially take this off, you're going to find plenty of rust, and I cleaned it up, and you can see the pile of dirt that came out of there. So you want to get that out. Unfortunately, some of these, and you can see that extra thing, they kind of put a rubber gasket in there, and to some extent that kind of sealed in here. But if you submerge your all-terrain cycle in water, water is going to get in there and get into trouble. And if you let water get in there and you let it freeze, let me give you a hint, your front wheel shan't be moving. So I have a tendency to, you know, not submerge these, or if I did decide to submerge one, I would pick one that's kind of my waterworks ATC, and I'd keep my take it to church Sunday one and not submerge it in water, because bad things could happen, obviously. Water could also get into your bearings and cause you trouble. I'm not going to go too crazy with this. I'm going to just squirt some grease in there. The seals look halfway decent. You don't want to put too much because you don't want grease on the, you know, brake surfaces. That actually cleaned up pretty well. It's not pitted, so I think it'll work fine. I'm going to also squirt some grease in there. I've seen people put grease fittings here. The only bad thing about that is as you grease it, eventually you're going to force grease into the brake area. I know we need no stinking brakes, but no reason to do a brake job if you're going to force grease in there. Anyway, you can see I cleaned it up. I just used a little emery and, you know, went around here. Let me give you a hint. When you run your fingernails across these, it messes your fingernails up. So this is to the point where it's ready to take the shoes off, and that's, you know, fairly easy to do. I'm only using one hand, but you could see I've just about popped it off already. With two hands they'll come off easily. I'll just smash the new set on and we're all good. You put it on, put that onto the fork, slide the bolt through. You got the front wheel back where it needs to be. The secondary thing, your cable, right? You really kind of want this to work properly, and you could see I'm just using fingers to slide this cable, the inner cable outside the outer cable casing. I've put some oil in here, light oil. What works best, I use WD-40. That's really not the best. It tends to evaporate. What works a lot better is the lock oil with graphite in it. You put some of that in here, and I have some out in the truck. I got to go get it. You put some of that in there, and what happens is the solvent carries the graphite into the cable. Solvent evaporates, leaves graphite behind. The graphite is a dry lubricating material, and it really makes cables work nicely. It does a good job, so I recommend that. Anyway, I have to go fish around for the minimum of a handle. The rest of this is in pretty decent shape, so I'm thinking of just looking around the Horde for a handle, and maybe I'll take you with me. Whenever I look around the Horde, you kind of run across all-terrain vehicles with interesting stories, and I think I located one that has a good story to it, so we'll take you out to look at that. Anyway, so let me get this to the point where this is a roller, because as you can see it's starting to rain, and we'll move on from there. New brake shoes are all installed, all looks good. It's doing the springy thing here, so that's cool. We already discussed the cable's good, so now it's a matter of a brake handle, and I promised you guys a story. So here is another Honda ATC200S, just happens to be a 1984, and it has the handles on it. This one came from southern New Jersey. I drove all the way down to pick it up, and it was in Hurricane Sandy. It was retrieved. I'm going to use that word. It was found someplace it shouldn't have been, so it was retrieved, and the gas station that retrieved it kept it for a little while, and then they used to deal with this kid who was kind of an interesting character, who ended up with it, and it's seized. It is rock solid seized, because the reason why it was loose is it was floating in the water, and eventually the water retrieved, and it was it landed someplace, and it's like, yo, get that out of here. It ended up at a gas station, then it ended up with this kid, and then it ended up on eBay, and old Harvey went down and picked it up. I bought it like cheap on eBay. I mean, it said it, the guy described everything that was wrong with it, that it was seized and that the fender was cracked, though it looks like it cracked more since I've had it. and it was rusty, and it was in salt water, and this, that, and the other thing. So nobody wanted it for any amount of money. I think I bought it, I think it was less than $100 on eBay, but I had to go fetch it. And for me, a ride down to Jersey is fairly painful, fairly long. I think it was like 100 miles each way, and a lot of traffic, tolls, and all the other stuff. So I promised you a story, and that's the story on it. Once again, it is rock solid seized, and there's not too much I could steal off of it. I was going to steal the brake handles, but I found another solution. So here's the other solution. A friend of mine was parting out all-terrain vehicles, but where he was living, it didn't work out very well. He couldn't continue to do it for the place he was living at. So as part of the deal, I picked up everything he had for his little business there, and included in that were these load of handlebars. And I've hung on to them because handlebars are just a perfect size where you could kind of cut them up and turn them into exhaust system, custom exhaust systems. So I figured I would hang on to them for that, and it just so happened there was a perfect condition handle on there, and I borrowed it. It's time to start putting it all together, and that's when you notice horrible things. See the way this is broken out there? They had a little of your epoxy. So you got this one that kind of orients you, and then you got these two. These are they should be 10. As a matter of fact, they should be studs with 10mm bolts on it, but it looks like they boogered all that out. So this is what's going to be hanging on to it. One for orienting it, and two more that actually seem to grab. So this is not perfect. Unfortunately, I can't just loosen these two, slide this out, and put that one on there, because that's the seized one. Anyhow, we're coming to the end. Now it's a matter of putting that into place. And no, that's supposed to be inside. Otherwise the hole wouldn't work out. The other one's backwards. The one outside is backwards, right? So anyhow, I'm going to start putting this together, and we'll be there. What's really helpful is with this jacked up on a little jack, you can kind of set the height just perfectly. With the tires on, the bolt slips through, and you don't have to strain too hard to make things work. I recommend that one finishes bolting the fender on before you put the tire on, or you're trying to squeeze into a small spot with a socket and making it more work for yourself. As you're putting the fender on, don't forget to slide the cable through. So here we are. Is this thing beautiful or what? Check this out. Round and round it goes. There we are. I mean, Harvey stuff never has brakes. Not only does it have brakes, check this out. Front suspension. Gotta love it. Okay, tubers, time for a ride. This is the one that I put the OEM carburetor back on it, and it has a little bit of a leak by, so it's important that one turns off the gas until it's, you know, put a little gas in the carburetor, start it, then turn the gas on. If not, she's a little floody. It also starts without the choke. Let's get a little ride in. So, front suspension. Riding on the little snow I have left. Now it's going to be muddy. This has been warm the last few days, and the snow is melted, but the ground is kind of frozen. So the top layer is, I'm going to use brush like that. Next thing you know, you come out with a dog kick on you. I love that wind up, that roar when she winds up. With those bigger front or bigger rear tires on it, when I throttle up, it lifts the front wheel a little bit, and then she has a tendency to plow. After I ride it, I don't have a rattle, but I have a little bit of a creak in the front. And I know there's enough grease up there. I just got to make sure it's tight enough. Want to do some more trail? See, a lot of you guys enjoy these rides. Probably because we hardly ever ride. We're always fixing these things. We're not riding them, so always got to look to make sure the camera's also aimed right. Sometimes the harness moves around. One time the camera got loose. Down at first. Before I bought this house, I owned another house on the far piece of this land, so to speak. And it had over 3 acres, almost 4 acres to it. And I was in my backyard one day, and I found a guy hunting back there. And I told him, I said, yo, you're on private property. And he told me no. And I pointed, and I said, first of all, you're too close to my house. And secondly, I own from this house to the middle of that stream, and as you look at my house and that stream and the two borders, I just want to tell you, you're trespassing, and I would like you to leave now. So he decided to give me a little more grief. I indicated to him that, you know, if you're hunting on private property, so you got that nice license on your back. If you're asked to leave and you don't, you know, they're going to take that away from you. And at that point, he decided that it was in his best interest to go away. Normally, I find that hunters are some of the most polite people in the world. And if you tell them where they're not where they're supposed to be, they thank you for telling them. They ask the boundaries and they move on. If they happen to be tracking a deer through your property, I don't know if you're supposed to let them or not, but I let them track it. Because if they're nice enough to get rid of one of the nuisances, I just as soon they harvest the meat and eat it, right? Why leave it out back? do, I'll go out and I'll decide, you know, I'm going to take care of this section of the trail today and that section of the trail tomorrow. And the last piece another day. You know, kind of clean things up a little bit. Because I like it when it's wide like this. It's a little annoying when it's overgrown and you're kind of brushing through weeds. So that's how you kind of get the ticks on you. The ticks always seem to be hanging out on the edge of the weeds, waiting to become part of you. Yeah, in the spring, when there's a lot of defrost and all, that'll be running water. I'm getting like a little stream running across. Guys, you see my buddy Chuck's tree stand. He's got a good vantage point up there. These trails work out well for kind of keeping the deer someplace. They seem that the deer are like humans. They just as soon not be walking through the brush if they don't have to, right? They'd rather walk on trails. I have another diagonal trail. I don't know if you guys can see it, all these pine trees. I'm not sure if it's by that pine tree or that pine tree it ends. I gotta finish that one up. That's one of the ones I've been wanting to do something with. A lot of this, the brush isn't all that high. It's just a matter of cutting it down. The only problem is once you cut it down, you got to keep it cut. And I'm not always very good at that. I don't, especially during the summer, time starts to get booked up with other stuff, flea markets mostly. And then I don't have the time to go out and play. Anyway, so this was a really nice long ride. It's going to be another few minutes before we get to the garage, but I hope you guys enjoyed it. Yeah, let's go around the back. You guys want to do another speed run? Third before I ran out of runway. I also want to keep reaching over here for the front brake. I got to get used to the idea that the front brake's over by the gas. I mean, this is obviously the clutch and the rear brake on one of these. If it worked. I love the sound of that as she roars herself up. So, I want you guys to remember where this thing started out. It was living in a mouse bathroom. all the mouse turds all around it. And now she's out being a nice rider. Those front forks, they're providing some spring action. The dampening action isn't great. I guess I could check the oil in them. But they're a lot better than they were. Yeah, the gas is off. So I put it in gear and it didn't move. That means the automatic clutch is working. As I ease out on the started to move. That's all good. I can hit the brakes and they work. One has to love it when a plan comes together. Anyway, I hope you guys all enjoyed this video. I want to thank you all for watching and commenting and subscribing. We should be getting back to the normal filming schedule or video schedule or whatever you want to call it. I want to thank you all who have shown patience in me. Please remember to keep your feet down, your heads up, and I want you all to get out and enjoy each and every day. Bye now.